So thank you. I think um, Craig has communicated with the panel with some ideas of how to proceed, kind of introductory remarks and kind of comments for what each panelist wishes to share, um, maybe on the order of 5 to 10 minutes maximum each, and then kind of open Q&A and discussion. So I don't know amongst our three panelists who wishes to go first. We could go alphabetically by first names, or Richard can begin. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Jeff, are you able to hear me?
Yes, you're a tiny bit soft, but I
Okay.
can hear you.
Okay. I'll try and raise my volume just a bit. Um, so, first of all, I want to thank Craig, Bobby, and Jeff for helping to get us organized and started. It's obvious that some thought and energy and TLC, tender loving care, has gone into getting us organized here. So I'm sure I speak for everyone when I share my gratitude for putting together today's starting session and for the year you've mapped out ahead. Yesterday, I started to jot down some thoughts or some caveats that I might like to share. I ended up with a list of, I don't know, 8 or 10 different things that I was reflecting on. And a lot of them fell into sort of one or two baskets, preparation and organization, and then actual delivery. And I woke up this morning and I decided, rather than jumping into those two topics, which certainly we could talk about more as we go on, I would rather take a step back. And I was reflecting on where I was 25 years ago when I used to go to the original classes for the Dharma Teacher Organization, and even our Thursday night gatherings at the Heian Pagoda, and what I felt at the time, particularly not so much for the book presentations, if you will, which kind of have the feel sometimes of a good book club, but really transitioning to more of what we might conventionally think of as a Dharma talk. And I could almost distill what I would share with you, basic though it may be, into two thoughts. And the first one is, be kind to yourself. And the second one would be, speak from the heart. We live in a day and age when we're doing it now. I mean, technologies are available where we can take in Dharma talks from people like Thich Nhat Hanh, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Pema Chodron, Norm Fisher. I mean, you could literally sit in your living room and spend an afternoon, a morning, an evening with one of these people. And with that in mind, I think it can become easy to set our expectations about what makes for an effective Dharma talk way, way too high. So some of you have probably heard the term imposter phenomenon, and I know I have felt it at times, and especially toward the beginning of this DTO trajectory. And, I would just say to don't seek perfection in a talk. Just the fact that you arrive and you take your place on the cushion and you share what you connected with around a given topic is enough. It's enough. For many of you, you'll be stepping outside your comfort zone. And there's a courage and a willingness to grow there. What Craig just walked us through about getting feedback from the committee. It's very beautiful to open up in that way. So I think by sort of tempering one's expectations and being as kind to yourself as you might be to another is a really good starting point. I'll just share with you one little technique that I have sometimes used and have grown into. So all of you are familiar with the fact that at the end of a gathering, it is a tradition in Buddhist sanghas to dedicate the merit. So we gathered today and we think about whatever merit might have come about of our being together and what was presented and shared, and we dedicate it for the well-being of others. I remember years ago, part of my work life involves having to do presentations, not only on a weekly basis in a class format, but sometimes speaking at national conferences. And I had put together a talk on positive behavior supports, what 10, 15, 20 years ago we might have called behavior management for students in public schools. And I remember thinking, I'll be surprised if 15 or 20 people show up at this, but that alone would make it worth it. Well, I ended up walking into what seemed to me to be this cavernous room, and I was shocked that there were probably between 175 and 200 people there. And I remember thinking, whoa, and feeling a little sense of perhaps trepidation or intimidation. And I just settled in and I thought to myself, may whatever I'm about to do be of benefit to students and educators all across the country, because it was a national conference. And I said it again, this time with a little bit of imagery, imagining like a classroom setting. May what I'm about to do be of benefit for students and educators everywhere. And then I said it a third time. And by dedicating the merit before I leaned into the talk, it essentially allows for a shift. And for me anyways, it took me from a self-referential place where there was a danger of judging mind or comparing mind. And it helped me just to keep the focus on the issue at hand, which is, I really have learned a lot about this topic. I love what I do. And that's getting into the second caveat, which is speaking from the heart. And if I just connect with the passion I felt about learning all this wonderful information and go into it with an attitude of wanting to share it with others, and tapping into my sense of passion and enthusiasm, then probably that's going to be enough. So, that second caveat, speaking from the heart, many of us are aware that Buddhism has a rep for kind of being detached and, not so passionate or whatever. And I would say that's a misconception. Being detached in terms of likes and dislikes and, going to a place of attachment or aversion is a different thing from having a desire to be of benefit and to just sharing and tapping into some enthusiasm about whatever it is you might be speaking about. And that's a really great place to be, particularly as you're newer to this. I think if you can connect with what you found moving or compelling about this topic with others, that's going to help keep you in that place where the focus is on the issue at hand. and a little bit less self-referential. So I'll close my opening comments there and thank all of you for listening.
Thank you, Richard. So either Bobby or Fernando?
Where's Bobby? Bobby, you want to go or you want me to go?
Perhaps you can begin.
Sorry, I was muted. You're big on my screen, Fernando, so I can go, or it's up either way.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you, Bobby.
I want to thank everyone for inviting me to do this, and a lot of what I want to say echoes what Richard just spoke of, starting with the imposter syndrome, especially going back to my first days in the DTO giving Dharma talks. There was a cat. You're going to hear them. I apologize. They're running around. You know, you never feel qualified to do that. Like, I'm not the Buddha, and here I am giving this talk. And many times it was after sitting in awe of other talks I'd heard from experienced teachers. So as much as that was true, when I was asked to be on this panel, I felt the same way again. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm on this panel, and my mind made a big deal out of it, and I had to settle into I can listen, I can analyze. That's what I'm going to call it, and identify the aspects of a Dharma talk that make it effective, and that's all I can be asked to do here. So I'm coming from that platform. I think that the question, what makes up a good Dharma talk, is I think there's a reason that for years, or how to give one, that's been asked and there haven't been answers. I don't think there is an easy answer, and I don't think there's one answer. There's as many answers as there are people, and maybe twice as many answers as people. But what one teacher said once was, if you give a good teaching, everyone in that room will feel like you're speaking directly to them. And that's an amazing thing. And I don't think that's more reliant on the audience and its ripeness for hearing than it is on the speaker's expectation of that's what they're going to do. And I've experienced that once in a temple where it was a Theravadan temple, and the Ajahn gave a Dharma talk, and when people went around and shared how they had received it, everybody had such different, very personal interpretations of what the meaning was, and it was fascinating. So it's big. It's big. I think that a good Dharma talk inspires people, and it has a way of going beyond the relative into the universal. But to be able to say what that is like being able to explain a masterpiece in art or literature. Like, there's something you can't quite put it into words, but you can tell that it's there, and a good Dharma talk will do that for people. Uh, from my experience, I think there is that range, and it is very important, as Richard said, to be very kind and not to expect to be perfect, because none of us are perfect beings. And if you're giving a good talk and it's from your heart, more than likely you're going to, I call it like giving yourself away. You're just saying what you have to say, and at the same time feeling that sense of non-self. Like I'm releasing this to everyone to see how it's received. And yet it needs to have that taste of the Dharma. And we all know what that tastes like. And I think that our topic this year with the Eightfold Noble Path is perfect for this, because we all have the sense of that. And then giving Dharma talks about the different elements of it, that taste will just permeate whatever is revealed. So beyond that, I'm just excited to see what comes up and what's presented and how it's received. And I'm just feeling very open about this exploration. That's about all I have. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Bobby. Fernando?
Well, I want to commend the Connecticut Sangha to pick this topic discussion, because I think it's very important, because so many people ask for structure, for ideas, and we have been struggling with providing a guide on how to become a good Dharma teacher, and it's been a little bit of a struggle trying to find that. And the reason for that is that it's hard to define how to give a Dharma talk, because we all have different sets of gifts and skills. So we're all going to use different ways of sharing the Dharma. And on top of that, the people receiving the Dharma have different ways of hearing, and will hear us in different ways, so that how a Dharma talk is viewed is different for different people. So that, how do you encapsulate something like that? So, and I think I'm excited that for us to begin to deal into this. It's going to be very difficult to have a cookbook type of instructions. So I like that idea of having some like case studies that people can learn from, because it's going to be different for different people. So that I was thinking about what in my mind is a good Dharma talk. And, I cannot tell you I know for sure, but I can tell you that I think I have pretty good handle on what it takes to be a good Dharma teacher. And I thought of some characteristics that I think are needed in order to be a good Dharma teacher. Number one is humility. Understanding that you're standing on the shoulders of so many generations of teachers. You're only an echo, a reflection of their wisdom. And to be able to express that in how you teach, I think is important. Another thing is I think of a good Dharma teacher approaches everything with a beginner's mind, has an open mind to learn and keep learning, no matter whether they are a Dharma teacher for 2 years or 30 years. Having a beginner's mind, one is able to teach better because you can express the fact how little we know. Another important characteristic is having compassion for everyone else, but compassion for yourself. Understanding, we'll approach trying to give a Dharma talk and giving the perfect Dharma talk, comparing ourselves with everyone we hear on every other friend we have. And we need to understand that what we have, the skills we have, are enough. We are not to compare ourselves with somebody else. You have to give the Dharma talk your way. You have to have that compassion for yourself to understand that you can do it, and that will be enough. Also, learning your strengths and your weaknesses is important to be a good Dharma teacher. You have to understand that you might not be able to explain things a particular way that somebody else does, but that's okay. You do it the way you see it. So an understanding of what you are able to do well and what you're not is a good way to help you be more comfortable giving your Dharma talk. And obviously, another characteristic that I thought is that what makes a good Dharma teacher, somebody who has an interest in sharing the Dharma. If you're not interested in doing it, then you're not going to be a good Dharma teacher. So I think, in general, some thoughts that I have, what it takes to be a Dharma teacher, and some tips on how to give a good Dharma talk. I think both Bobby and Richard explained that to them. I think that the importance to speaking from the heart, I completely agree with Richard. I think and speaking to the heart and sharing your experience is important. And I think letting people know how you view the Dharma, I think that's a good way of teaching. And I think that obviously you need to be prepared. So you need to, whatever you're going to begin with, you need to be acquainted with what you're going to be talking about and feel comfortable, speaking about that. So that goes for any talk of any subject or anything like that. But and also, I think so, being prepared and then consider your audience. Personally, I do more talking to audiences that are new to the Dharma. When I give a talk to seasoned Dharma practitioners, I talk less. Because to them, they don't need a lot of teaching. All you need is more or less maybe hopefully sharing your experience so that they can feel how you're feeling. And what's always helped me is that when I give a Dharma talk, it's like Richard said, I try to, like a minute or two or three or four before I give a Dharma talk, I sit and try to just settle and calm my mind. And and also consider what I'm about to do as a gift that I'm giving out to the audience. And because it is a gift, I try to block out all those temptations of thinking, oh, I'm not being effective, or I'm not doing it as well as such and such. Because, when you're giving a gift, you just want to just share it and enjoy how the audience receives it. So, I think we need to obviously develop some more ideas about how to give good Dharma talk, but it is not a straightforward issue, and it's not a cookbook type of preparation that we're going to be able to do.
So thank you very much, Richard, Bobby, and Fernando. So by our schedule, we have a good amount of time. So I'm glad for that. So I would also like to recognize and mention kind of the challenge that Craig, I, and Bobby had in selecting panelist members, because we have a wealth of experienced members in the DTO. So I just like to also recognize that we have other people on the call today, also with a great amount of experience that could be very helpful to those of us who have not given an official Dharma talk yet. So I would certainly encourage anyone who wishes not just to ask a question, but perhaps to share from their heart as well with their experience of developing and giving a Dharma talk. I'd also very much appreciate to hear that. So with that said, I guess my question for someone on the panel who might be willing to talk about this is for you. Can you recall for us your experience and what you may have actually done when you were asked to give a Dharma talk? Any details you might be able to share about kind of the process you went through, both your kind of internal process with your thinking about how to gather the materials, or how the Dharma talk might flow, or what to include. I know, as you said, Fernando, it depends. As many Dharma teachers as there are, there's that many times X number of ways to kind of develop a Dharma talk. But I guess for me personally, and I'm sure for others, just to again hear a little bit, somebody who has walked the path, how did you find your way down the path, and what did you do? Thank you.
I'll answer that one, and maybe Richard and Fernando will follow me, because when we were having this exchange of emails, that was one of the questions that came up. What was it like to give a Dharma talk? And I've given a number of them over the years, and when I was giving them in the DTO, there's a couple that are vivid in my mind. And I think my style was based on being a high school teacher with all these expectations of engagement and teaching to different learning styles and modalities, and just, actually like putting on a dog and pony show sometimes. And that's not what the Dharma is, but that's how I would teach in school, or it felt that way pretty often, and it just transferred over. So there was one Dharma talk I gave on the universe in a single atom, and it's a very intellectual, technical writing that some people said was like at a master's level in physics and all this. And I think Michelle was at this talk. Yeah, so I was completely intimidated by the whole deal. And I read it and I took notes. I had index cards, and I had this whole pack of index cards that had all these great points, and it was so packed. It was just so packed with good stuff that it became a stack. And then to present it, I was going nuts. I got a pad of watercolor paper, and I just started like doing illustrations of different points. And then I had about 6 or 8, pretty big sized watercolors that illustrated points made. And I had an easel, and then I had my outline of what I was going to say. And by the time I got it, I was completely nervous, because I just like exposing myself in a way that I don't do. I feel shy very often, like, but here I was, and here's my preparation. And when I gave it, the actual delivery was so well, it was organized and it was planned, and I never had to wonder, what am I going to say next? It just, just flipping through, and here it is. And I had gathered quotes from different sources to interject in, and it was this whole package, and it was very well received. But it took an intense amount of effort and time to put together, and to do that regularly, it was just a lot. I think it was effective. I think in other cases, by comparison, and I agree, it's not good to compare, but sometimes a Dharma talk can be 15 minutes long or 10 minutes long, and just hit people the same way. So it's one of those things where, for me, it was just doing what was coming naturally with that material that I was charged with presenting. Yeah.
Thank you.
So Jeff, I'm willing to go next. Again, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And we're inevitably getting to that point where there's going to be some overlap. So much of what Bobby and Fernando have already shared resonates with me. I think a good starting point in terms of planning and preparation is to really step back and think about, what are the big ideas or central themes that I want to bring out and leave people with. Maybe what was it, if we're doing it in the context of our classes, for example, what was it about this reading that was an eye-opener for me? If it's a more a Dharma talk designed to connect with, to introduce, let's say, a practice. Bobby used the word inspiration before. What was it about this that I found inspiring? So having an idea of what all the other ideas and different more minor points aside, what are the big ideas? and then kind of backward chaining or reverse engineering from there. How am I going to get to those big ideas? Making an outline. You know, my advice for an outline might be, I often start with a more detail-oriented, granular outline just because it helps me to become more intimate with the material and make it my own. But by the time I'm ready to sit and deliver a Dharma talk, for me, and again, per what Fernando said, we're all going to have our own styles that work for us. But increasingly, I look to just have a few words or phrases, maybe even on just an index card, 5 or 6 things that allow me to stay with some structure, because I find it's very easy to get tangential and, you know, sort of get off into the woods, so to speak. So having a little bit of structure in the form of, these are the ideas that I want to do, maybe in this order. But intentionally at that stage, not having all of the, you know, sub bullets and things that initially I might have been including in an outline. So I usually go through more than one outline as I prepare. The other thing about keeping your outline bare bones, and I know some Dharma teachers who don't even have an outline. They might do the prep work, but they want to be completely ad lib and spontaneous when they hit the cushion. For me, that doesn't work. I do tend to like having just a few big ideas sketched out in terms of a kind of a semi-structure. But why bare bones? I think a good talk should feel somewhat conversational and not academic or like, you know, just sharing information like one might on a busy PowerPoint at a meeting at work. I love what Bobby said before about a real effective Dharma talk. Each person feels as if you were speaking to them individually, even though they know they're there as a Sangha or whatever. And by not having too much information on an outline, it allows me to stay in that a little bit more relatively spontaneous conversational perspective, which isn't to say sometimes I don't veer off. I like to look at multiple sources. Often I'll cross-reference different Buddhist books or writings or Dharma talks. And I have to be careful at times not to get too granular or detailed because I've learned it so well. But I like the confidence of knowing the topic well and having been inspired by others. But it is a balancing act, kind of staying with the essential points. Let's see. Final thought I would just say is the power of anecdotes and stories. One of the things that most to me separates a Dharma talk from more of like our book report format we might use in our studies classes is, you know, Dharma talks often are more tied to inspiring and into introducing actual practices and the like. And I think we as humans, we're social beings. When you're sharing a story, it's a way to sort of bring other people in sync with you. You often, even if you're just watching a good Dharma talk and you look around the room, you'll see heads nodding and people smiling. And there's a real connection that comes with sharing a story or anecdote. That might be an anecdote from the life of the Buddha or any of the great masters. It might be an anecdote from your own personal experience. But I think to the degree that we can embed those within a Dharma talk, it helps to foster those connections that make a Dharma talk more rich and more powerful. Thank you.
So let me tell a little bit about my first Dharma talk. I was that 2005, 2006, I forget. Is my first year with the DTO. We're meeting at Shuangyang, and as the beginning of the year started, there was a whole thing about what books do you sign up to give a talk about, and I was trying to fly below the radar and not choose any book, and because there was a lot of people involved, but eventually there was a couple books left, and to make a long story short, I got assigned to do a report on the Zen keys from Thich Nhat Hanh, and I prepared for it. I've professionally I do I have an advantage about with some of you because I've given talks before. So part of having trouble giving a Dharma talk is getting over that first stage fright of just being, and am I gonna get there and go blah, 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 what do I say, that kind of thing. So, but that you get over that with practice. The more you do it, the better it is. But so I gave my talk. It was probably more of a book report than a Dharma talk, but I did put a lot of, because Zen keys resonated with me the most of all the books in that year, and I didn't pick it. It was chosen for me, but it was, I guess, the universe decided to have me do this. So I gave the Dharma talk, and it went okay. I thought it was pretty good. But fast forward a little bit towards the end of the year, when we had Dharma Combat, and at that time it was Dharma Combat. Because we had to, I remember that first year. I don't know, Maeve. I don't know if Maeve is on. Maeve knows this. The first year we did it in one of one of the chapels there, and along with all the class, we had about a bunch of monastics there, including Bhikkhu Bodhi. Okay, and so I remember that they were asking for volunteers to present to the group for the Dharma Combat. So I said, why not? I got up there, and I started giving my little summary about Zen keys. And then I say, and because the fact, according to Zen, books are not important. What's important is just the Dharma. And you can throw away all the books because the Dharma is important. In the meantime, there's a bunch, the Theravada monks are there, and they begin to question me. And actually, I felt like this big, and talk about humility. It taught me a lot about humility. Like I knew nothing about Zen. I thought I knew everything about Zen. So it was an experience that taught me a lot about how to be able to convey what I was thinking, but not to be so proud of my knowledge that I thought that I had the answer. So anyway, that was my first Dharma. One of my very experience of giving a true first Dharma talk taught me to be humble.
May I ask a question to the panel?
Yes, yes, please do.
I would like to hear the panel speak to a couple of things that got mentioned in what you said. And what it made me think about was that as we move toward Dharma talks generally, we're stepping outside our previous format of learning the Dharma. And I think that in our previous presentations, we were very focused on acquiring knowledge, all of us, and transmitting knowledge amongst ourselves, and often with very difficult materials. And so this is moving into a different realm. And I think a lot of us in this group come from professional backgrounds where presentations have been a part of our professional lives. And also many of us come from different spiritual backgrounds as well, which influence us. And one thing I'd like to hear you speak of, and how this could be possibly worked into the agenda for the year, is the fact that we come together as a spiritual community. And there is spirituality that moves through our community as we give these things. And I heard this, and often those things cannot be accounted for. I mean, they're really sacred. And I think we've all felt them in the context of our get-togethers. And I heard that in Richard saying that the anecdote that he gave of presenting to this group that was much larger than he expected, that he just called on himself to, to share what needed to be heard, and to dedicate what was being given. And again, heard that in what Bobby said about, that in the end, each person is going to hear this and receive this differently. And that's the magic of the spirit working in the group, is that each person takes away what they need to hear, and it can be remarkably different. And so two questions I have are can we also focus on how to be the best possible audience for Dharma presentations? How do we facilitate the movement of that spirit within our group? How do we become the deep listeners that we need to be? And how do we create that realm of communication, which I think comes to humility and relinquishment of ego, and interdependence, where maybe there is no distinction between the presenter and the listener. I mean, it's one big flow through of energy and communication within the Dharma. And how can we also use this as an opportunity to facilitate that sense of community, of Sangha, the sense of this not being an academic presentation, but a spiritual presentation, and how to share both ends of it, both in the presentation and the listening of it. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
My immediate response to that, Heather, is something I was thinking about yesterday and today, because you can give a presentation on anything, and if the audience isn't ready to receive it, then it's worthless. So it's like you have to plow the field before you plant the seed. And within Sanghas, I think our liturgy and the meditation and the chanting, it prepares the mind to receive. and that's a big part of why we can sit and hear things, and pay that attention. It becomes deep listening because you've prepped your body and mind to receive that kind of thing. So I think that's really important. And when I think about my experience, like the Dharma is a boat, and a good Dharma talk is almost like a very gentle propeller that causes me to move and says, I want to go farther. I want to see more, and the Dharma talk itself it's a push and it doesn't really come. I don't know where it comes from. It comes from the talk. It comes from the words. But I think what you're saying is very important, because even being on this panel, it's like we could all be on the panel, and it could be an open discussion, and with participants, hopefully that's the evolution. This is just a format to get us started. And I'm projecting, but so I really appreciate what you said, and the humility that's echoing Fernando, and relinquishing your ego. That's that oneness. It's the non-self in the Dharma that makes us feel connected, makes me feel connected. How do we foster that? Zoom is weird. It might be a little hard through Zoom. It's like being in physical presence just has that other energy that does something. I think you can feel people's hearts. So maybe we have to open ourselves wider in order to feel it through Zoom. I don't know.
I love that image of the propeller, Bobby. That's just a beautiful, beautiful image. Thank you for that.
Could I just jump in with a short response to that? That's very well expressed, Heather. Thank you for sharing that. That is one of the things that we want to do. And this is going to be an organic process, because it depends on how things evolve. But what I see as a possibility for the review, I mean, maybe during the Dharma talk itself, or the discussion period after Dharma talk, it might be a little bit then, but after getting people's reviews and comments back in our committee meeting, and then the meeting of the committee with the speaker and other interested parties, I see that being a possibility right there, as happening right there, this sense of community where the sense of individuality drops away, and we're all there in the Dharma. I mean, this past weekend at the silent retreat, after we broke silence, we had 2 or 3 hours together where I truly felt that. I mean, we were all in the room together and people were talking, and it was me talking when somebody else was talking. There was no sense of any separateness. Well, I mean, a little bit, but there was a great diminishment of that, and it was great. So I think that we have the possibility with tools like this of doing that. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, Heather, when you mentioned the phrase book report, what came to my mind was information. Okay, we're sharing information with one another. It's expository, it's explanatory. Whereas a Dharma talk, I'm going to riff off of what Fernando said before, the word experiential. There's something more intimate and experiential that often is a thread within good Dharma talks. And to go deeper with that, I think some of the best Dharma talks I've heard there's almost a sense of, Bobby used the word opening. Vulnerability comes to mind on the part of the speaker, you know, whether it's sharing an anecdote or a story, or you know, tapping into narratives and life experiences and the like. And I think to do that, one of the things that is needed is to trust and lean into our own deep sense of dignity and worth. In Dharma circles, we might call it Buddha nature. And I appreciate, Heather, the way you framed the question. And I think, you know, I don't have control over, as a speaker or giving a Dharma talk, how the community or the Sangha is going to necessarily respond. But I think if we can lean into our own sense of dignity and worth, take a risk in maybe being vulnerable, sharing experiences and the like, then often there's a magic that's hard to describe that will occur where there is that resonance, that synchronicity, where other people too, you'll be mirroring their self-dignity and their worth. So I think a lot of it starts with, again, kind of where I started today, our own attitude that we bring to the talk, and a willingness to be vulnerable. And as I said, just showing up on the cushion, it brings a certain sense of vulnerability with it. And then, you know, on the listener side, Fernando brought up the term beginner's mind before. Again, somebody being willing to look at something from a perspective that we've not seen it from before. Often those are the most moving or moments of opening when we are deeply listening to a Dharma talk. Thank you.
Good morning. This is Michelle. I just want to add something kind of tying off of that, that vulnerability piece and tie it back towards some of the comments that were made earlier, I think, from the panel in the beginning about that. You know, Fernando, you kind of mentioned how it felt like you get ready to do that first time ever, Dharma talk, and there's that nervousness or hesitancy, or, and you put it all on yourself, and we all do it, right? We just write in our heads. I want to just comment on the combination of that vulnerability piece of allowing yourself to be vulnerable, as well as, knowing that this is something new for folks sometimes, right? And one of it's not a trick. It's something that I know I do every time that I'm presented with an opportunity, to present the Dharma, which is something that I do differently than when I'm presented with the opportunity to present something professionally. And it's about the audience. Before I get there, I have this different sense of connectivity with the people that are going to be in the room. And they could be people I've never met before, but there's this belief that I have that I am deeply connected to the people that are in this room, going to be, as they're prepared to hear what I might think is, decently prepared. And maybe I turn out that I wasn't as decently prepared as I wanted to be. But I walk into the setting knowing that there is going to be that heart-supported connection, right? Because they wouldn't be there to participate and listen if they weren't interested in the topic to begin with. So I feel safer in a way. And I know many of you on this call have been present to different presentations or Dharma talks that I've given, and some in the not so recent past, maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I am not a person of high emotion, and my vulnerability and comfort level with the audience in particular, talking about a specific topic, right action, just the floodgates, but they were controlled floodgates of comfortable release and expression of that experiential piece. And it all kind of clicked together as each of you were just presenting different pieces and commenting, that for me, in some of the ways, when I thought I probably felt like I had the least amount of control over what I was trying to present, perhaps turned out to be some of my better Dharma talks. And it was because I felt a very deep connection, but I set that expectation in my head that that existed. And then it just really did. And it just allowed that vulnerability to be there. So I just want to just kind of put that out there, of all these ways that all that kind of connects together. And it's kind of overused, the terminology of a safe space, but it really is. And so the nervousness we feel is probably what we put on ourselves and not what the audience is going to sit there and, criticize, right? So I just want to put that out there.
I think now what helps me is same that as Michelle was talking about, is that the feeling of that I'm doing this out of love. I'm giving this talk not because I want to be, number one kind of a teacher. I'm doing it out of love. And that sort of releases a lot of the tension of how you're going to look, what you're going to say, are you going to fumble what you're doing? You just let yourself out and open yourself up with that vulnerability that Richard was talking about. And on the other hand, I think if we're a part of the audience, try to go into that talk like talked about, like you're receiving Dharma rain, right? You don't use your mind to interpret that. Just receive what you're hearing and let it soak in. And that may make you a more receptive audience.
I wanted to say that, is it okay if I speak? Hi, everybody. It's good to see everyone. I learned so much about Dharma talk from this yoga teacher that I have. And what happened was that in the beginning, when I first started to see her, she was trying to talk about Buddhism in this very technical way, and often she didn't really get the facts right? Like she didn't really understand it that well, so there I am sort of sitting, and speaking about being a good listener and then being what turns you around or how you transform. And I can remember like early on, my comparative mind was like, that's wrong. Instead of just like going with it, I was like disrupted mentally. And here is this woman who is trying to give some piece of the Dharma to the best of her ability to this yoga audience that was like, or participants who was so diverse. I mean, I can't tell you like how diverse these backgrounds. They were not there for a Dharma talk, and she had the courage to sit and give that. And there I was like, that's incorrect. And then, so just revealing of myself. And then maybe a couple weeks later, she took the cushion and she spoke. I still feel like the humility arise within me. And she spoke about her father, who was a welder, and how his work ethic and integrity informed her life. And, really it was a talk about ethics, from a very deep, experiential, beautiful, moving, boat pushing way. And it turned me around. It was like I had the movement because I could recognize the ways in which, I'm closed, the ways in which, that vulnerability and that openness and that sharing of your life is really the Dharma, and it is the piece that is moving. And so it's even now, it's like you know, she'll give these talks where, you know, like technically it's a little incorrect. But I'm so grateful for it. I transformed, you know, because here she is with this courage, taking this risk, offering these kernels to people who would never get the Dharma. And so it's like, you know, it's interesting how like the transformations in the offering and having the courage to, you know, express yourself in front of people transforms them in ways that she has no idea really how this has transformed. She doesn't know my background. She doesn't know what I care about or what I don't care about, but she moves me and I look forward to her now.
Thank you, Maeve. Just hearing that gives me hope of me being a Dharma teacher.
Me too.
We have a little less than 10 minutes left, so I don't know if anyone who hasn't either asked a question or offered some thought cares to speak. Now would be a good time.
I'll try real quick. One thought that came up, I really appreciate it. It's really been great to listen to everybody today. Really helpful. I'll take a chance and just put out there kind of a half formulated notion. But it's that, you know, in thinking about the Dharma, there are so many different subjects and many of them are so deep. And some of them are so universally kind of ring with human truth that no person, no Buddha, no Bodhisattva can lay claim to the whole thing. It's the notion of being kind of a vehicle to present something that just goes beyond any human individuality. If there's a way to kind of capture that and get it into the sense of the Dharma talk. And how you would incorporate that into a Dharma talk, that kind of sense of awe and gratitude for the helpfulness of some of these truths. I don't know if that's a question or not, but anyway, that was the best I have. Thanks.
It was good. Thank you, Ted.
I wanted to thank the panel for a wonderful presentation of public speaking. And I really, it's not so much in my wheelhouse anymore. And, but you've given me hope that, you know, I could learn. Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question. So a lot of times when I give a talk, I'll do a lot of preparation and I'll feel comfortable about it and everything's going along fine. But then something, we get down to the wire and suddenly there's all of this stuff that I didn't do. And invariably, last night being an example, I stay up way too late and then I have to get up way too early and I'm kind of not in the best shape the following morning in terms of like cognitive function. So aside from not doing that, does anybody have any suggestions for how they deal with that type of situation, that type of recurring situation?
I think you have to practice more the feeling that you're enough, because you're staying up because you want to make it better, because you want to make it that extra, instead of just making sure you get enough sleep so that you're brighter in the morning. I think that's a common problem we all have. You wanna just get to that to make sure that everything is perfect, but you gotta also take care of yourself and understand that there's only so much, and your next Dharma talk will cover the rest. So be good to yourself.
I think another thing that could help with that, although it requires a lot more time, but it was mentioned in our email exchanges, is to practice or rehearse, which to me, it's almost counterintuitive to rehearse a Dharma talk. It seems like a Dharma talk is in the moment there, but I do know a monk who would say he would write his Dharma talks on Monday and Tuesday and then practice them Thursday, Friday, and Saturday to give them on Sunday. So it was part of his weekly schedule, and he would execute those. And he gave a polished Dharma talk by that time, but that's very professional, if you can put it that way. It's doable, but requires a lot of time.
Janet bowing in with just a quick thank you to the panelists and everybody in the Sangha group. It was very stimulating talk and my heart was moved, and I thank you very much. See you.
Michelle bowing in just really quickly in response to Craig, your question about, kind of that situation. I guess what I would offer is to take a moment as you're in that condition or that situation and ask yourself if it is because there's two options. There are two situations that I can come up with in my head. One is, are you trying to, as Fernando described, make it the absolute best it can be? Or, which I really think is more the case, is it just that we've tapped into in that situation a content area that becomes so exciting for us, and there's so many rich sources, it's hard to know where to stop, right? With how much to include. We get actually like escalated into wanting to learn more. And in that particular case, because I do have the same kind of advice as Fernando, is kind of be kind to yourself and remember that what you provide is enough at any given time. But on the other flip side, if it's that excitement piece, what I tend to do is I tend to make a list of all the items that I would love to teach about this. I wish I could include it, and then draw the line somewhere and say, that will be my next, I'll offer that as a different talk, because I tend to think that we've got so much breadth of exposure through our teachers here, through our Sangha members, through just life in general. It's hard to know where to stop when you dive in. And that's kind of the beauty of the book part, right? Is that you go, oh, okay, I've got this book, and at least you got a little bit of rough boundary, but we tend to all shoot and find more sources. It's challenging when it's not based on a specific book, but a topic. And I think this year will show that. And I think it's going to be an interesting exercise of containment for ourselves, as Dharma teachers. How do you know where to draw the line for the next one? But I think a lot of it's due to excitement of topic, right? And so I just put it out there to kind of step back and think that through and say, well, which is it this time? Because every time we're going to hit it a little bit differently for ourselves. I know I have the same issue, so.
Thank you. So we are about at the end of our time. So just once again, last call, if anyone has kind of a burning desire to share a last thought or question. Okay. So I'd just also like to offer my thanks for our panel, our wonderful Sangha. This has been truly inspiring and encouraging. And I'm looking forward to the year and looking forward to perhaps giving a Dharma talk with a little less trepidation and hope and excitement now. So thank you.